Hi, welcome to the show. My name is Michael Fagan, and I'm your host. This is Waiter Nation. I'm joined by Josh Ziegler from Georgia every Wednesday, and today it's my pleasure to introduce to you John Meadow. He is the founder and president of LDV Hospitality. LDV Hospitality has such famous brands as American Cut, Scarpetta, Dolce, Corso Coffee, and many more. Morning, John. How are you today?
Good morning, guys. Thank you for having me on.
No, it's all our pleasure. So we were just briefly talking, and we'll get into LDV and all the brands. And I just told you I drink the Kool-Aid, so I want to talk about that.
Thank you for that.
But the first thought on everybody's mind is you must be dizzy with all the restaurants across the country, and you're getting calls every day. We're going to close down in this city. We're at 25% in this city.
It's a lot to navigate.
It's a lot to navigate. I think the strangest, toughest thing for me is the pace of all of it, because it's very fast and a lot of chaos, and then it's nothing. And then by nature, we want to be engaged, and you want to be kind of full on, high energy, active. I'm a very active person, and that's just not the pace here. So more than anything, it's a test of patience, which is challenging. I think in managing through any crisis, it's much better to face it head on and get on with it. But the reality of this wasn't a 3-month gig. This is more of a longer term solution to ease into. So just trying to be positive and patient. I'm a big believer in tomorrow, but today is tough.
The outlook when we get past this, whenever that happens, Josh and I talk about it every week. We're ecstatic about, we think people are going to come out in droves afterwards. Is that your thought?
100%. I think people are out in droves now. So few places, our LDV, by the numbers, we closed 26 venues in 9 cities in 3 days back in March.
Wow.
Now, sadly, we have 4 things open in a semi-capacity. But all 4 of those places, even in a semi-capacity, whatever it may be, they're full every night. And we're turning away guests. So the reality is those that are comfortable dining right now are dying to go out. They're happy to go out. It rains and pours. They're dining on the street in New York City in the bike lane.
Yeah.
It rains, and they stay. New Yorkers, we have this rep of being not the nicest people in the world, but they're sitting there taking a rainstorm with pleasure just to be outside. So I think that the demand is already there. I think that there's a question of what's the right balance between government, legislation, commerce, and when is it appropriate for everything to come back to normal. But when we do, fundamentally, people need human connection. That's very clear. And that gives me great confidence that it does come back. It's going to be different. But at the end of the day, people want that social connection. They'll come to a restaurant for it.
Definitely. That's a big thing that you've always talked about, the social connection inside your restaurants. And whenever you're around and people ask me what you're like, new employees or customers and that, I always answer with the same question. He's a visionary. And I tell you that because I've been in the rooms where you're looking at blueprints with the team. And as you think of the vision and you say, the gentleman will come in with a pressed white shirt. The ladies in a dress will sit here. They'll sit together. They'll socially interact with the people next to them. And that made an impression, because most people will say, all right, well, we're going to put meatballs on the menu. We're going to put an antipasto on the menu. But you're looking at the vision, and not everybody is that person, but they feel like it inside LDV restaurant.
Well, I can't tell you how touched I am to hear that, especially from a long-term, team member that's been with us through a lot, because that's my passion. And
right.
To the extent that we can have a group of people come together in alignment to kind of, it's not about buying into that. And I'm not trying to be manipulative, and I know that Kool-Aid's the term, but when people come together and have a desire and a passion to create that specific type of LDV experience, that's why I wanted to go into the restaurant business. I love meatballs. I love pasta. I love wine. I love steak. I love all of that. But I can make all of that at home. So yes, our chefs can do it better than I can, but I don't think they can do it better than my grandma. At least grandma's pasta nourishes my soul because I grew up with it, and that's a very special thing to me. But grandma's passed away. I'm not trying to go out on a Saturday night at 9 p.m. with grandma. So right. I think what calls us to come together, and what's so fascinating about Corona, if you look at the restaurant world over the past 20 years, this rather esoteric food porn, a chef's craft, I respect all of it, but that became the forefront in so many ways, certainly of the food media, but also what drove a lot of people's dining decisions. When you strip humanity away and we're locked up in our houses, depending on where you are, for way too long, certainly in New York, it was a tough spring for me and my family. All you want is to go out and frankly have a martini. But the martini you certainly can make well at home. And I'm not saying it doesn't take skill, but what calls us to come together? And I think that now we're so awakened to how important the role of the restaurant as this public forum for people gathering is. And I think that therein lies a positive for the future.
No, I agree with that. Absolutely. I mean, the humanity of it. You go out, you obviously socialize. I've always looked at my job as, yes, I'm going to guide you through an experience here at the restaurant, but also we're friends for 2 hours. You and I, we're friends for 2 hours, and it's a connection.
Danny Meyer's,
Way to go out.
Danny Meyer in his book, Setting the Table, the one phrase that stood out with me was, we're on your side, being everybody here in the restaurant is on the customer's side. And that always stood out to me. I always want to be on their side. I want to be the guy taking care of them. I want to be included in their celebration.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Those are the restaurants that become institutions and they become critical fabric of a social community, as opposed to the next hottest hardcore ramen place that does everything the chef's way for the chef's benefit.
Yes.
It's hot for 6 months and it gets a good review, but it doesn't last. I had one Michelin star restaurant. We closed it after 2 years. I had one number one in the Eater heat map. We closed it after 1 year. The restaurant is about the consumer first, and then the team of people, and then the owner and the chef and our craft should frankly come last, because we're there to serve others, and you either take pride in that or you don't.
When we worked the first time at American Cut in Atlantic City, we were in a casino, and the entire casino closed. It was not. We were the most successful restaurant in the building. Probably heading toward the most successful restaurant in the city. Because I was in it, I didn't realize how much people loved it until after I left. And maybe that's like, a girlfriend that breaks up with you, right? You don't realize. But then I'm at Borgata and I'm at other venues for 3 years in between. And they're saying, oh, you know what we used to love? And they didn't even know me, American Cut. And I said, oh, I was there. Oh, you were there. And this happened, no exaggeration, once a week. And I thought, they loved it. I'd call Randy. Of course, Randy's our GM now, and he was there with us then. I'd say, Randy, these people love it. And he said, I hear the same thing. I hear the same thing. So to go back when we reopened, I was excited about that because I thought, can't go wrong. If everybody in the city loves it, you can't go wrong if you go back. And I think that concept that you had is the difference. John, is Scarpetta open in London?
No.
Okay.
Scarpetta London will open, the plan is September 15th. You said it very well earlier. We've had so many plans that we've changed so many times. And who I feel the worst for is for our staff. I mean, down in Miami, at one point there was a plan to open 3 places July 6th. And we called we called back some 200 people to work on a Monday in preparation for a Friday opening, brief training, etc. That was at 10 a.m. At noon, the mayor went on TV stating that now bars and restaurants could only do this way, and then within 2 hours, we put everybody back on unemployment. Okay.
I was going to get into, is there a difference between
that? It's my fault, but I have such sympathy for this yo-yo that our teams go through. And at the end of the day, if the staff doesn't feel taken care of and motivated in the whole thing, you said it great about that moment. Your 2 hours were friends.
Yeah.
You're in a bad, shitty mood. It's hard to I get it. We're all professionals here, but you want happy staff to engage with customers. Otherwise it's forced, and it's just not realistic to think that someone in a frightened, emotional state for very good reason is going to be able to offer this nurturing experience.
Oh, it's 100%. You can fake it from time to time, but 99% of it has to be legit.
Yeah,
it has to be genuine.
Our objective is to create a genuine, authentic experience. So whether it's good or bad, I'd rather have genuine than perfect, right? Mm-hmm. And that has to be real.
Genuine rather than perfect. That makes a lot of sense. Another reason you're talking about a happy staff, you as the president, and I've worked a lot of places, it's not common. I'll tell you a little story. I was waiting on you 6 months ago, and we were talking, and I said, John, do you know who I am? And you said, You dropped your phone. You said, you embarrass me. Of course I know. You work for, but in my experience, that doesn't happen. I can wait on executives across the board all the time, and they come back and they look at my name tag, but they don't really remember me. And I think I'm not special. You know everybody. You walk into a restaurant that you haven't been to in a year and you shake 3 hands, you know everybody's name. And that makes us feel like we're doing something together. We feel like we're a part of it.
You just said it. Who the hell am I to shape a customer experience? I live in New York City. The restaurant's in Atlantic City. How am I? What could I possibly benefit past? You paid me a nice compliment of having good vision. I have vision. I will say that proudly, and I like to indulge in my dreams. And this is the story I want to tell with American Cut. But that happened in 2012.
Right.
So how can I contribute to that restaurant? Changing ownership casino 8 years later. The single most impactful thing I can do is try to foster a togetherness and connect with our staff, because they are the ones that make the experience. You talk about in every organization, there's an org chart and there's a triangle of authority and structure, et cetera. The rest is the ultimate inverted pyramid, probably more so than any industry you could ever imagine. If I had a surgery the other week. At the end of the day, there's 20 people in the room. I need the surgeon to do everything, right? In order to be safe. In a restaurant, who's going to contribute to the guest experience, me or you? Of course it's you. So how do I make you excited to do that? And what's so twisted about the world is basic self-respect and connecting with others. That's how you get the everyone's buy-in, and that's how you shape an experience.
It works. Another thing that you do that I haven't seen before is you do support the dreams of your employees. And I can tell you, Xavier with Shoebox, you were the first one on board. He has a great,
we still use it.
It's a great system that inventories wine. He's a sommelier, so he thought of that. You're the first guy on board. So now he can go out to another client and say, LDV believes in me.
Of course.
And you have to believe in the person. You've helped me before in projects. You were gracious enough to come on the show today. And that's not common. I can't call many CEOs and say, will you come on my humble show and just have a conversation with me? So that also goes a long way.
No, but I'll say, who the hell am I? Look, at the end of the day, I feel very fortunate that I was able to chase and realize my dreams. I didn't do that on my own. I had other people. I had investors since day one. I got literally a $35,000 loan from grandma in 2004. And that's how I started my business. Past that, everything was, an evolution from there, right? So I feel fortunate to be in that position. And I'm no different than Xavier, or you, or anyone else. And again, when you can inspire people and everyone comes up together, I fully believe that a high tide raises all ships, right? So people that are out there, zero-sum game, if you're winning, that means I'm losing. Bullshit. This is a collective whole. And when the whole is positive and people are take pride in their everyday little details, that's when you have a great restaurant. So why wouldn't I? I mean, I wouldn't have taken Xavier's Shoebox if I thought it was a crap product. But I believe in him as a person. So frankly, I'd much rather be able to have a touch in a relationship with an entrepreneur trying to go forward, as opposed to just be another number for a big mega tech company.
Well, I think a lot of times in my dealings, it comes into egos, if he becomes successful, he might outgrow us, and he's my employee. So I want to keep him there. But you always talk about it. If we want to support, we want you to go beyond LDV. We want you to be successful here and then go beyond and then have a good life.
Rise up, become more successful.
I'm a megalomaniac or whatever it is. I have an ego as big as this room. I do. But I know that I have literally nothing without the team of people around me. Mm-hmm. Right. So, yes, it is altruistic and I really want others to win. But part of the ego, what more pride could I have? And then seeing a bunch of people around me that have been on my team be cultivated and go from here elsewhere. I can't tell you how many people in my corporate team, not in an entrepreneurial capacity, but rather I believe in promotion from within. So you take the event manager of one restaurant and they get promoted to corporate. Then they become your head of marketing. And then they get offered jobs for double the pay in big fancy companies. Because that big fancy company believes in Team LDV, it's tough for me to lose quality people, but that's the ultimate trophy to me. Yeah. Is that we're validated by big corporate America, which we're not. I'll always be the little engine that could. So to see our crew come up together, I mean, that's the most rewarding thing in the world. And by the way, that does feed my ego. So
there you go.
It's a good way to look at it.
The problem is the people that are insecure, that they want it to be all about them.
Yes.
Right. And you see that so often in this business. And I've had a lot of friction with chefs over the world. And I think that part of that is just the chef wants to pretend like they're playing golf, a single person's sport.
Yep.
Last time I checked, it takes 100 people to run a restaurant. So you can throw a football better than any in the world. If there's no one to catch it, then what do you have?
Exactly.
Nothing. You have an incomplete pass.
What made you get into? You went to Cornell. Am I remembering correctly?
Yeah, I went to the hotel school there.
So you come out of Cornell and you say, I want to get into the restaurant business or the hotel business. I'm sure you had a lot of choices. So what made you center in on that and then stay with it so long? Because I know you've had a lot of ups and downs.
Yeah. I'll rewind the tape further. I always say that this business chooses you. You don't choose it. So, for me, I'll go back to 6 years old, Easter brunch in the Plaza Hotel, telling my mother that one day I want to own this hotel. And it was always the Plaza Hotel was the everything to me.
Uh-huh.
I knew I wanted to be in the restaurant business. My first job was a dishwasher at Au Bon Pain, if you're familiar, the fast food chain.
Oh, yeah.
One day I got to put on the uniform and make sandwiches and go behind the line and interact with the customers and making sandwiches and giving the sandwich. And I loved it. And I'm like, this is crazy. Like, I'd like to think that I can aspire to something more than fast food in my life. But I loved the engagement. And I loved so I knew from there that that's the pursuit that I wanted. I went to Cornell to the hotel school, which is a wonderful academic offers a wonderful academic exposure and background, and frankly, a fantastic network for the purpose of capital raise. And I would say we primarily are focused on hotel, food, and beverage. And in every deal, there's someone from the Cornell Hotel School. So I feel very fortunate to be a part of that community. But my first job outside of school was at the Plaza Hotel, a food and beverage manager. It was the rudest wake-up call of a lifetime. Union staff, which, I won't go there on a political basis, but just I was a 21-year-old kid getting abused by older, grizzled union waiters that had been there for 30 years that you couldn't fire.
Guys like us.
That was just a real wake-up call into humanity and empathy and sympathy. And it was a great experience, but I realized that my greatest passion, what we were talking about earlier, was to create. So I wanted to go and build and create, have a vision and see it come to fruition. So in 2004, I was 24, and I left, and I partnered with a few guys and opened the bar. The bar worked. 2005, I went out on my own to do a big fancy restaurant, and it was an epic, tragic failure in every regard of the word. But the silver lining is, they say location, location, location. We had a good one. We were down in New York's meatpacking district. Mm-hmm. We had signed a very cheap lease prior to Apple moving in, and the neighborhood. It's funny, when 2005, I signed that lease. And it was a very rough neighborhood, and the old New York, which sadly seems to be coming back. But then Apple moved in, the meatpacking district became this big fancy neighborhood, and we had this great lease. So I was able to go and make a deal there. And then in 2008, in that same space that I failed, we opened the first Scarpetta. We were nominated for the best in the restaurant in the country, the James Beard Foundation, 3-star review in the New York Times, and from there we're able to grow and build the business to what it is today. So it's been a roller coaster. Since then, I've had mistake and hardship. But, one of the most valuable Corona lessons for me has been, I realized during Corona, literally cooking pasta and making a martini for my family. We were like 6 of us around the table. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry. And I realized how much I do love to cook. I like to cook. I love to bring people together and curate and create that experience. So I think for me, having absolute clarity in this abject time of misery, that I love New York, I love the restaurant business, I love my team, and therefore no matter what, I'm going to fight through this thing in a belief that I get to the other side. And even if I don't, I still know with great conviction that I'm on my path. That is invigorating, and we need that type of spirit during a time like this to know. Because if you're waffling around the fence, why even bother the fight? Because it's a fight.
You know, there's a study that you can do with children, and it doesn't matter your income level or where you live. But if you eat dinner around the table 3 nights a week with your kids, the success rate is enormous compared to sitting on the sofa. Somebody goes into the bedroom, and that gathering is what it is. What's it feel like when you have a restaurant, when you come down and you visit in Atlantic City, you'll walk in at 7:30, the place is bumping, people are laughing, the music is great, and you walk in and you're like, wow. This is like, I remember thinking about this 10 years ago.
It's your vision. You brought everybody together.
Right? Like, what's that? Is that do you get that like sensation when you see something that you created?
No. Let me take a step back. What you said about family 3 nights a week around the dinner table is fundamental, but I'll also say that applies to friends, right? So you don't see your close friends. I don't have the luxury of seeing my close friends 3 nights a week. But if we go out for dinner, 8 guys or 4 couples, once a month, to a restaurant, that coming together makes those relationships. That's where I find, in my personal capacity, my greatest happiness. So I think it applies to both friends and family, people coming and sitting around a table, and I think that's a very powerful thing. Mm-hmm. To your comment about me personally, there's 2 drastically different things. I have that elation that you're describing, and to see the vision come together and all of it. For me, my happiest moments with a restaurant is the first day of training where our space is 90. I get very involved with design and construction. We're 95% done. And there's a day where our new staff of 50 to 100 people, they show up in the room and they come, whether new or old, they come to be a part of LDV and be a part of this opening, and you start to connect with those people. That's a moment where it all becomes real. They say the people make up the restaurant, and it starts with the staff. So that day when the staff comes, over that 2-week period of training, finishing the details of the construction, and then that first night of friends and family, where typically I know a lot of the people are just, it's this kind of thing. It's scary as all hell, but that to me is that's the best feeling I have. That's the best feeling, because it all becomes real for the first time. 5 years later, when you walk into a restaurant, you develop every night. So I eat in our restaurants typically 4 nights a week. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm home. And then Monday through Thursday, I'm traveling or in New York, and I'm out in one of the restaurants. And it's always a business-centric kind of dining thing. And you develop a very strange social dynamic whereby when you recognize customers or you see nice people, you connect with them. It's a very quick, it's genuine, but it's literally a minute-long quick conversation, right? So that becomes second nature, and that's pleasant to me, but it's so fast that it only leaves such kind of an impression. But I do enjoy that. But when I sit at the table, sadly, the only thing that happens for me, I sit there and I try to focus on who I'm dining with, especially if it's business and trying to connect. But the whole time, I'm just looking – I'm not looking for, but I see the smudge on the mirror, the typo in the menu, the music is too fat, like the most bizarro OCD freak show little details consume me.
Of course.
That's not fun, but it's important, I think. On the other hand, the thing that gives me the excitement is I'll have a coffee in 5 seconds with a busboy that's been with me for 5 years, or seeing a waiter that I haven't seen in a long time, and that little moment, and you shake their hands, there is something so genuine about that. And I'm so grateful when, staff are dedicated to us and to our team. That staff connection is the thing that gives me that high. Mm-hmm. Just seeing guests filling up a room, it's good, but then you're just looking around and wondering, it's not good. And then you chase a perfection that doesn't exist. But
I know every time you come into Atlantic City, you say, man, the soundtrack here is the best. And it's like you listen to Atlantic City and it's like, I love this song. And then the next song comes on and you're like, oh, I love this song too. And it's just like the same thing. And
those are the moments. I was listening. I said, Randy, who sings this? And it was a song by America. 2 days ago, and I'm driving on satellite radio, and that song came on. And I told my wife, I said, I heard this last time I was in Atlantic City. God, that was a good restaurant. It pulls. There's all these details of a restaurant that pull on the heartstrings, and then it's a sentimental thing that you come back to.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
One of the core values or values that you have is, and this always stuck with me too, is you never know, right? You never know who you're waiting on. You never know who you're working with.
100%.
You don't believe it?
No, I said 100%.
Oh, I'm sorry. I heard you wrong. No, right?
No. You never know. And you'll be surprised every day.
I've had busboys before that are now general managers and owners, and I've waited on a guy that comes in and gets a bowl of soup and a beer, and then comes back with a party of 100 4 months later, and he remembers, right? Like that. And a lot of people say it because I worked in a lot of companies, and they have a lot of these HR speeches, and they pass out. I believe it with LDV. And the other one is stay humble, right? And that's unusual too, because no matter what your success is, you always, whether it's me making a lot of money or whether I waited on a celebrity or you, opening up your 20th restaurant, you always say, stay humble, right?
You have to.
It's not about you. It's about them.
It's about them. And how many things go wrong in a restaurant every day? A million? Like this, there's so many businesses where you do a nice job and I don't know, every business has challenges. How many businesses have as many challenges and open for human imperfection and error like a restaurant? There's a million moving parts.
Mm-hmm.
And invariably, how many go wrong? So if you're not humble, that means you're not picking up the cigarette butt in front of your front door. But if you're not picking up the cigarette butt in the front of the door, why in the world should the customer spend $100 on pasta and wine that costs you $20?
Right.
And all of those things are going to go wrong every single day. So if you're not humble enough to pay attention to those most basic little details, you're never going to have a lasting restaurant. How many restaurants are hot for 6 months and then they're gone? Never.
Correct.
And how much money do you make in that? None. All you did was you lost the investor's money. And that makes you not a scumbag, but it's like, and then you do it again and again and again. That doesn't work.
Exactly.
So the only way to have, and again, it's not just picking up the cigarette butt and making it clean. You do that. Your staff see you do that. Everyone does that together. Everyone stays humble. Everyone stays hungry. Then you grind, and then you foster ultimately positivity. It's corny, the cliche. It's not about the end result, the road, or it's about the journey. Yeah. What is a restaurant? Every single day, it's the same. It's a journey. And if you're not happy along that way and fulfilled along that way, the end result is shit. Pardon my language.
Yeah. I always say that how I got good at what I do is not training. It's because I was bad so many times, and then I learned, and then I was like, oh, and I've been, failed so many times, yep. And then you recover, and then you learn. I know what to do. So it goes along with the training, but you have to fail. What is it? Fail forward? Is that what everybody likes to say? Fail forward, and that sounds kind of what you're saying too.
Completely. It kind of applies to life too, no?
Sure.
Right. That's one of the things I love about the restaurant world is I always say it's humanity amplified. It really is. And I don't know, everyone's version of failure is different by virtue of position. I've made a lot of tough failures, poor business decisions, deals that I never should have done. And we've paid deeply consequences, both financially and more importantly, human. Mm-hmm. But I think with the failures, you get absolute clarity on who you are, what your organization is, what your core is, and then you really zero in and hone in and focus on that. And I think that's how you get, we always talk about good to great. Right. And I think that's that path. The beauty of
do you have any regrets about not going into this industry, but working for yourself and not working for somebody else? Because the buck always stops with you, whereas you're working for somebody else, maybe you can make the same amount of money. You grow up in their company, but it doesn't stop with you.
My wife does.
Oh, I'm sure.
I'm sure. My disgusting schedule and lack of balance. It's a tough thing. So we're doing I won't say who because it'll sound I don't know, because my comment was so inappropriate. We're doing a big project, and sadly, through COVID, one of the most respected hotel companies in the world, like everyone, there's a lot of elimination of position, and they're like global president of food and beverage. This position was eliminated. The exceptional person, but the position was eliminated. So I'm sitting there, there's 20 people on the phone, and someone said, half in jest, John, you should apply for that job. Like, you should take that job. I haven't had a job since I was 21 years old at the Plaza Hotel.
Right.
It's a life, right? And I said, wow. The younger me, I'm like, that's a dream. Like, that's everything I would have dreamed of, going to college for the hotel business and the whole thing. Like, amazing. My wife would be so happy. And when I said to them, I said, and the best thing is I would have no pressure. And I realized I insulted all 20 people on the phone. And I said, I'm sorry, let me clarify. I go to sleep with a certain level of, excuse me, I don't go to sleep. I try to go to sleep. And I carry a certain personal financial burden, human burden of, caring for the livelihood of 1,200 people.
Thousands of people, yeah.
Capital investors and all this stuff. And like, I'm pretty young to have these bags under my eyes. It's not, and again, I'm not saying I'm tough. I'm not saying anything. It's just the one thing that I do consider is I realize now that a lot of what I love about what I do, I could have achieved or gotten to savor and enjoy that journey without a lot of the pressure that I've taken by virtue of being an entrepreneur. I think now, I just turned 40 this year. I think I'm better suited to deal with the pressure than before. But I look back at my 30s like, a young, reckless boy on a train wreck. And that comes with some, tough consequences. You know what I mean? Like, your child's born and then you go to work the next day.
Right.
And everything that comes with that. And that's not about being tough. I miss that precious time in my life. Now I make mandatory. I don't give a damn who you are, what we have going on. You have a kid in our organization, take the time off. Whether you're paid by us or paid by the government, that's more precious than anything that we can have to offer you in your job. And it's not this old school tough grinder mentality. There's a difference between humble and having. Don't lose out. There's nothing wrong with having a good work-life balance, and I think long term you get healthier that way, and that's important. So, as an organization, we have to cultivate that for everybody all the way down the line. Otherwise, you just burn people out, and that's not the win. So yeah, it's a mixed bag.
So you don't have any regrets, but you think about it sometimes.
Yes, and if you had, would you do it all over again? I would do the same thing. I hope my kids go down a different path. But I know who I am, and I know that at the end of the day, it's the right path for me. I just wish I was a little smarter along the way. Like what you're saying, fail forward.
Right.
You shouldn't be afraid of failures, and at some point I will forgive myself for certain failures that I made, but I'm not there yet. I'm just not. But I will not repeat those failures. I know that.
That's the idea.
Have you ever thought of writing a book, John, and putting all your little secrets out there and say, you make a little face like, nah, not yet. Like,
No, I was chuckling. I mean, everyone says Danny Meyer's such a nice guy. I'm not saying that he's not. But if I had to describe Danny Meyer, I would start with he's such a smart guy. And he's this beautiful combination of nice and Midwestern sweet hospitality and intelligence that he's turned into, the superstar of this industry. I'm none of those things. I think I'm a good person, but I know I'm not the nicest. I know I'm definitely not the smartest, and I'm just not articulate. I'm more, and I'll also say that I don't think that this industry is rocket science. It's all about heart. And I don't think that my story, I have good stories, but in terms of my insight, I'm a big believer. And the older I get, the purposely more dumber I'm happy to be, because I realize that, a lot of this is simple, right? But I don't think you need 200 pages to articulate what is, I believe in simple is not simplistic, right? So I don't have all the gimmicky words, et cetera. I don't do a lengthy training part. We have other people on our team that are much better with the words and being articulate. I believe that the key to this industry, it really starts from the heart, and it's hard to articulate that. You don't need 200 pages for that. So my version of it, you don't need 200 pages. So what I like to do is conversation like this, where I think the greatest thing I can contribute is I think anyone that connects with me, they realize how much passion I have, and hopefully they feed off that, and hopefully there's something inspirational in that. I'm not saying I'm special. I know that I give off energy. That's hard to do in a book form.
Yeah, and I'm a fan of Danny Meyer, but again, I probably disagree with more things than I agree with him. But when his book came out and he had these little things that he was doing differently than everybody else, and then everybody went along.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of things with LDV, and I'm not blowing smoke because you're my boss, because I'm not even working right now. It doesn't matter. But you know, in all the chain restaurants, Morton's and everybody's got a spiel. LDV doesn't have a spiel.
No,
you hire the best
bring your
people.
personality.
That's my biggest. So I'll take a step back. When I was 18, Danny Meyer opened Tabla in 11 Madison Park. So I was 18 years old, my freshman year of college, and I was their first ever Cornell intern. They opened in March, and I went there in May, and I was a maitre d' intern between the two restaurants. And back then he gave monthly orientation, and he talked about his 5 steps of enlightened hospitality and the whole thing. And I sat down and I said, this guy is a full-blown genius. His capacity to articulate these specific little moments in a fashion that every last dishwasher up to the fancy Cornell kid, everyone can understand it and buy into it. And I was just smitten by the emotional IQ and the specificity. He has that. Our restaurants have, past the core of this is a restaurant experience and hopefully you like it, hopefully you don't. Frankly, we often get different type of consumer. It's a very different restaurant experience. And our biggest thing, which it's hard to articulate because SOPs are very specific. My biggest thing is all I want, and you said it earlier, Josh, you're thinking about being the friends and the authentic experience, human connection. I want to go to the restaurant and not, okay, I went to Scarpetta, I had their signature spaghetti, but I also want you to connect with Martin the waiter. Because Martin the waiter is a part of the restaurant. So if Martin the waiter has this overly precise spiel, then do I know Martin the waiter as a person, or could Martin have been Jimmy, right?
Right.
And our biggest thing is amplify your personal goodness. Come as you are. If you have a tattoo, I want you to show the tattoo. There's an old style European servile approach to service, whereby in the big fancy French hotels, they say the best service is the one that you don't even know that it's there. So you anticipate the guest needs, and if you see that I'm having an espresso with no sugar, you take the sugar caddy away from me, right? Without me even noticing. I respect it. They don't make mistakes. They're technically 100% perfect. The restaurants that I go back to are the ones, and again, everyone is different, but again, we're trying to create restaurants. I don't want to say, I always joke about FUBU, for us, by us. I like that. For me, if the waiter comes over and has some spectacular, interesting tattoo, as a customer, I'm going to say, wow, that's awesome. Where'd you get that? Tell me the story. I want to know where they're from. I want to know what dish do they like. I want to know what wine do they like. I'm not looking to make a long-term relationship with somebody, but those are the restaurants you remember. I believe that as a consumer. When I buy stuff, clothing, whatever, from retail salespeople that in that 5 minutes, I have a good feel for them and I have a connection with them.
Right.
Materiality only goes so far. If you want good pasta, depending on who you are, what your story, everyone has their different version. Well, let's just stick with pasta. Stay with grandma. She makes the best pasta and you ate it your whole life. Why do you go to a restaurant? So forgive me, I forgot what we were talking about. So
no, the spiel, and
that's our biggest ethos is we don't hire a type. We don't say I want all 5'10" blonde models. I don't care. I want a mix of people, but I want people to be empowered to be authentically them. And that's how you get a genuine experience.
The authentic word is good because I always say trust. And I have a customer right now that I've waited on for a long time. The wine list doesn't come out. He just says, Mike, what are we drinking tonight? And I can pick $1,000 bottle of wine and I can pick an $80 bottle of wine. But I don't know, you don't always go to the 1,000, right? What are you doing? But that trust. And that's because we just have conversation.
For a second, but if you're at American Cut when we reopen.
Yes.
And then if you went to Amada the next week, that customer is not following Mike. Of course he is. Right? It's not just this is the menu, this is the wine list, etc. It's Mike. And I think that you develop that trust. And then, it's funny, back to the Danny Meyer thing, he's the best about the democracy that is a restaurant, and all customers should be treated equally. And I believe that all customers should have an exceptional experience. But our business, when you get a 30% gratuity instead of an 18% gratuity from that guy that he trusts you for years, the loyal repeat guest makes such a long-term impact. And that is the fabric of the community of what a restaurant represents. So I think that, yes, you have to give an exceptional experience to everyone, and there's ways to get there.
Mm-hmm.
But I pride ourselves, and we go to the extra mile to cultivate. I don't want to talk, VIP sounds like an arrogant term, but our loyal guests are everything. And getting that repeat customer really is, to me, one of the keys of this business.
Whenever
it's a relationship,
whenever one of my friends goes out and they say, "Oh, we went out to this restaurant or that restaurant," and they'll start talking about the food, I say, "What was your waiter's name?" And they'll, "Oh, I don't know. I don't know." And then I think, "Oh, well, that's always my goal when they leave." And I'm not forcing my name on them. I'm just making the connection that when they leave my table, and 2 weeks from now, they were like, "Who? Oh, this guy Mike waited on us, and the steak was good." It's just an afterthought, my name. But I want them to remember we made that connection, and then we go forward from that. I always think, like, I always look at the Yelp reviews. I don't care, good or bad. Did they mention my name? All right, they're coming back. They're going to have. I'll get them.
And can I tell you something? As an owner of a restaurant, that's what I want more than anything too.
Yeah.
Again, there's different types of restaurants. There's some restaurants that you go once for this extraordinary, unique, life, ethereal, existing thing. There's some restaurant. I go to the same cafe for breakfast every single day, and I bring my kids there on the weekend, and I literally have coffee. It's a little kind of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
I like the Olive Garden and the breadstick that goes on forever. At the Olive Garden, I don't necessarily need to have that connection, because my connection is the breadsticks.
Yes.
When I look back in my life, the restaurants that were that meaningful to me, the best experiences of my life, and all of those places, those 20 places, I can name someone on the staff.
Right.
When I think back on my experiences, I remember those people. And again, everyone's different, right? We're obviously human type of people, and not everyone.
No, I think everybody's like that. You don't remember what you eat, but you don't remember what you ordered, but you remember being there, who you were with,
Yes.
who took care of you, how crowded it was. You remember all those things.
Frank Bruni, the New York Times critic, and he was a tough critic, and he's an interesting character. But he had a piece maybe 2 years ago, and I'm gonna screw it up, but the general premise as I took it was something to the extent of, when I was in my 30s as a critic and a reviewer, what I looked for in a restaurant was this, exotic, unique, esoteric, food-centric, very provocative food. When I was in my 40s, I wanted to chase a power scene. When I was in my 50s, all I wanted was a martini. And I thought that this, coming from this, legendary 30-year restaurant critic, was so profound. And then the next line was something to the extent that, the word restaurateur is derived from, I don't speak French, but derived from this notion of restoring one's soul. And I'm sorry, but perfect pasta, perfect wine unto themselves don't restore one's soul.
Right.
It's all of the ingredients in the soup and the humanity, that the combination of the human, the physical environment, the food, and the beverage, those four things come together with all myriad ingredients, and therein lies this hard to describe feeling that pulls on us and brings us back. And I'll say that the most important bit is the humanity.
I like it.
So we have a bright future in front of us when we open, John. That's I'm staying hopeful every day. I can't wait to reopen. And
100%. I think the tough part is that a lot of restaurants won't reopen.
Yeah.
And therein lies a restricting of our business. And then there's going to be a financial reality that you're going to have to open restaurants with less staff. And there's a tough financial reality. But for guys like you guys, and I'd like to say myself as well, for passionate professionals, like anything, cream rises to the top. And I think that the customer wants the restaurant experience. So the business side of it's tough, but if we're driven by the customer that wants the experience, we should all be optimistic that the customers are going to come back to our restaurants. and will therefore have the opportunity to earn their love, support, and patronage. Again.
No, it's there. My wife, she works at a steakhouse local out in the suburbs of Atlanta, and they opened up as soon as they could. And I mean, they've been packed. They've been packed. Now it's local people. They don't rely nearly on the amount of corporate business that we do down in Buckhead.
Right.
But you know, the demand's there. And my feeling is once there's a vaccine and everything's cleared up, 2021 will be the best 2021 for all of us in the industry.
Every crisis is found. Every crisis after the 1918 flu, then you have the Roaring 20s. After the the decimated 70s, the Roaring 80s for 10 years.
Right.
Crisis, everything. On the other side of it, people need to connect, and they will.
Right.
Very good. John, it was an honor and pleasure to talk to you today.
Thank you, guys. It really was nice to see you.
Thank you.
Connect, and I look forward to seeing you both in our restaurant soon enough.
Absolutely.